Hey you guys, for math this week we are going to be reviewing addition and subtraction strategies. You've already seen all of these earlier in the year, so none of this should really be new. One of the strategies that you have in your packet to do is making a double. So for instance, if I was going to have 6 plus 5, I can think about the double 5 plus 5. The place that I'm getting this from is I'm going to use 5 from the 6. Well, there's 1 left over. So instead of just thinking 6 plus 5, I can think 5 plus 5, which is 10. And then you have 10 plus 1. And so your answer would be 11, right? And so if we look down here for 7 plus 8, remember you want to go to the smaller number when you're making your double. If I go to my bigger number, I'm going to get an answer that's actually bigger than what I'm looking for that addition problem. So go to your smaller number and let's think about the double. So the double for this would be 7 plus 7, and I'm getting the 7, the other 7 from that 8, right? And then from that I have 1 more left over from the 8. So really when I'm thinking 7 plus 8, if I don't have that memorized already, I can think 7 plus 7. I do have 7 plus 7 memorized, which is 14. So then we have 14 plus 1, and so our answer would be 15. Okay, so let's look over here at 8 plus 9. Remember, go to your smaller number. So I'm thinking about my double here. I'm going to think 8 plus 8 in order to get this answer. I get this 8 from the 9. From the 9, I still have 1 left over. So in order to solve this, I can think, well, 8 plus 8, I've memorized that, that's 16. 16 plus 1 will give me 17. So there's your double strategy. Okay, your next strategy is to think about subtracting by going back to 10. We learned our tens facts, our ways to make tens early in the year, and so those are in our heads, those are memorized, and so we can think about going back to the 10 to subtract. So the way this looks, they want you to picture the number line, and so we have 12 minus 5. Well, I'm going to go back to the 10. So I'm going to think, okay, well, I know 12 minus 2, that's really easy. That gets me back to 10. This 2 comes from part of the 5. If I take 2 away from 5, well, I still have 3 to take away. And 10 minus 3 is 7. So that's how we got 7. So the way that we would do that down here is I'm going to think about my bigger number that's bigger than 10. I'm going to go back to 10. So I have 11. If I take away 1, that's easy. That'll get me to 10. I took away one of the 1s from here, and so I still have 5 more to take away. So I'm at 5. I had 10. I took away 5. Now I have 5 left over, right? Easier if I had a number line to draw this on for you guys. So over here we have 13 minus 6. So think about your number that's bigger than 10. If I go to the 13, take away 3, that'll get me back to 10. Well, the 3 that I took away had to come from the 6. So from my 6, if I take away 3, I still have 3 more to take away. So I was at 13, take away 3 gets me to 10, take away 3 more, and that gets me to 7. And so that's our going back to 10 strategy to subtract. All right, you can also use your fact family. So think about your number bond here. If I have 15, 15 is my whole. My parts are 7 and 8. When I think about my fact family, the only numbers I'm going to see are these 3 numbers, right? So I can take my parts, 7 plus 8 equals 15. I can flip-flop my parts, so that would be 8 plus 7 equals 15. And then I could also start with my whole. I can start with 15, take away one of the parts. If I take away one part, what's going to be left over? The other part. And so we can also do it where we take away the 8 as the part. So we have our 15. Remember, when you're subtracting, you always start with the whole. You want to start with the bigger number. So we have 15. We take away the 8 part. We'll get the 7 part left over. So using our fact families, we can solve some problems right here. So when I'm thinking 14 and I know this part is 8, well, I'm thinking about the other part here, right? So 14 minus 8, you might not know that answer, but we can think about these parts. I know because of this fact family that 8 plus whatever 8 plus whatever is going to equal to 14. So I can put 8 in my head and count on to get this part. So I have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And so if you were counting along with me, you would have seen that you had 6 on your hand whenever you counted there. And so because of your fact family, you now know that this is a 6, so we can fill in the blank. So basically, I had 14, I took away this part. The other part that I have now is 6, so we'll go ahead and put a 6 over here. So I know that 6 is going to go in this blank, right? And then over here, now I know because of my fact family, 8 plus 6 will equal to 14, and then flip-flop that, and you have 6 plus 8. So whenever you're checking your work, remember once you've solved your fact family, these 3 numbers will always be the same. You're just moving them around to show your parts and to show your whole. Another thing in your packet is multiple step problems. Pay close attention to what's going on in your problem because you're going to have to add more than once, maybe subtract more than once, possibly. You might have to add then subtract, or subtract then add. You have to pay attention to what's happening in the problem. So let's look at the problem really carefully. There were 13 frogs in a pond. So we're picturing that in our head. That's what we do whenever we read our word problems. Make that visualization. So you have 13 frogs sitting in a pond. 3 jumped out. 3 jump out of the pond. So whenever 3 frogs jumped out, what happened to my number? If the frogs jumped out, did my number increase or did it decrease? Hopefully you said it decreased. So whenever I know that something gets smaller, it decreases, so you should be subtracting there. So our first part of the problem is 13 minus 3, and taking away your 1s there, which is pretty easy, gives you 10. So at this point in the problem, you've got 10 frogs in the pond. So we're not with the 13 anymore. We've already dealt with the 13 and the 3. Now our number is 10. So we're going to be focusing on this 10 for the second part of the problem. So at this point I have 10 frogs in the pond. Then 5 jumped into the pond. If 5 frogs jumped into the pond, we have to think, did my number increase or did it decrease? They're jumping into the pond. So my number increased. So now we're going to take our answer from our first part of the problem and we're going to add the 5 frogs that jumped back into the pond, and you know that 10 plus 5 equals 15. So our total answer is 15. Our unit is frogs, right? 15 frogs are now in the pond. So in this problem, we had to subtract first, then we had to add. So sometimes you have to do addition and subtraction in the same problem. You have to pay attention to what happens in the problem.